And welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. In this episode, we're talking about something that doesn't always get the attention it deserves, and that's taking care of ourselves as EMS professionals. We are constantly focused on helping others, but the truth is, if we're not well, we can't give it our best out in the field. So in this episode, we're going to dive into the Fit for Flight initiative, a push to bring awareness to a triad of physical fitness, mental wellness, and nutrition in the EMS world. From meal prep to mindset and everything in between, we're sharing real talk about how to make small, realistic changes that add up over time. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. As clinicians, we can honestly set these realistic goals and build a culture where taking care of our health is not just accepted, but it's expected. We'll get into the role of personal accountability, why support systems matter, and how organizations can help create healthier environments for their crews. So let's get into it, and let's talk about what truly being fit for flight looks like. Thank you to our sponsors, Metro Aviation Incorporated, Airbus, and Precision Aviation Group.
Welcome to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Vertical Valor Magazine. Produced in partnership with Echo, Every Coast Helicopter Operations, the Valor Flight Crew Podcast promotes the personnel and life-saving equipment behind helicopter air ambulance services. Join hosts Mike Fideli and Blake Schreider for in-depth interviews and expert insights from air medical personnel, pilots, communication specialists, and maintenance crews who play critical roles in airborne emergency response.
Line 1 accepting.
Copy, Line 1, gotcha, accepting. You're going to be talking to Red Feather 1 on LCEMS.
Hey, y'all, welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. My name is Blake, and I am here with my awesome co-host, Mike Fideli. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great today, Blake. How are you?
I'm feeling okay. Just trying to get through, feeling a little under the weather, but I think really today's episode is really going to help highlight how I can work through feeling under the weather a little bit. And
It's maybe I'm looking a little rough today, but that's okay. We still love you anyway.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think, when I woke up this morning, I just felt kind of nasally congested, just kind of feeling a little bit run down. So try to get as much rest as I can. It's been a busy past few weeks, trying to keep up at work. So, and if I recall, I think you've been kind of doing the same, flying a lot, making things happen.
Yeah, life's been incredibly busy and work's been incredibly busy. So definitely, I think today's discussion is going to be one to highlight the importance of how we take care of ourselves and making sure that we can continue to do this for the longevity of our careers. So really looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, it's going to be really great overall. And, I think one of the things that we as providers, we help other people, right? So I think a lot of times we don't prioritize ourselves. We spend our lives in this field dedicated to helping others. That's what we do. So I think sometimes we put off these things, talking about fitness, especially we've talked mental health before. That's definitely part of it, but there's also a big physical aspect to doing this job and keeping ourselves healthy and whole so we can do this, like you said, Mike, for the duration, and how long have you been doing this now again? Remind me.
I don't want to say.
Oh.
Healthcare for 26 years, flying for 13 of those.
I think once you hit 25, I think you classify as a paramedisaur. I think, is that a word? Paramedisaur? I've been doing this a while.
I think so. That may be.
No, but in all reality, we don't really prioritize ourselves all the time. There definitely are providers that do. But I think generally overall, we work hard to do this and sustain it for longevity. Industry wide, I think we need to make a change, and I think for today, we've got two great guests that can really define how they've done these things personally and brought these to a higher platform to really reach other people and inspire them to take care of their health. So without further ado, I would love to introduce, we have Michelle Kline and we have Vince Dravecky on today. Welcome to the show, guys.
Welcome.
Hi there.
Hey, thanks, guys.
So overall today, Vince, we met at Future Flight Crew a few years ago, San Diego. Rock on.
Yeah. cycle, or 23.
That's it. Bringing into light, these things of how we need to take better care of ourselves. I don't know, Vince, we've closely almost been able to work together. We've missed it by a few shifts
Every single time.
but really highlighting, as we've talked, I know you just recently relocated to the Northwest, kind of up in Idaho.
Yep.
But being down here, a fellow Floridian, it's hot. The summertime is hot. And, when we look at, as we do and complete these patient transports, you feel pretty drained, especially in the late afternoon sun. And Michelle, can you remind me again, you're in Alabama?
No, I'm actually in Mississippi, but I work in
Mississippi.
Louisiana.
Ah, it's close.
I'm familiar with the heat and the southern comfort of the South, the summers we have here.
Is that what we call it, a southern comfort?
Southern comfort.
Here, I thought that was just a drink.
Warm, sweaty comfort.
You get used to it, don't you?
Yeah.
But they say that, but I think over time I've just personally become less tolerant to it. I think I'm just getting old, so that's part of it. But hearing your guys' story and connecting, Vince, when you connected me with Michelle, and really bringing to light, I'm going to be honest, a lot of this hit home for me. I look okay on the outside, but inside, it's more than just having big muscles or, anything. There's a whole element to just being healthy overall, right? And being able to do this job. And, I've been flying for 13 years and I've noticed over time, just thinking back to where I started, I had no problem hauling a stretcher through or, moving, patients over, a field, but just really trying to hear what you guys were presenting on industry wide, how we need to make a change to better help our health overall. Michelle and Vince, I think you guys really have a great program that you've kind of developed to really highlight we can be better, we can take care of ourselves, and it can just be small changes. So, Michelle, can you tell us a little bit more how you came into developing this and getting this out there?
So Fit for Flight came to existence probably about 4.5 years ago. I just, honestly, I'm one of those dinosaurs that you spoke of earlier. I've been a paramedic now for like 25 years and a nurse for like 16. So honestly, the environment that I like to say I was raised in, because I started EMS when I was very young, like 24, and don't do the math today. But I started EMS when I was very young. And to be honest with you, the culture was terrible. And I don't know if it was different for men, but I can tell you as a woman, it wasn't very friendly. You had to be okay with everything. You had to shove in a lot of stuff and just deal with it. There was no help. There were no good mentors. There was no peer support. It was show up and act the part and just get through the day, right? And if you ask for help, that was a sign of weakness. There was such I don't even know the correct word, but weakness was highlighted, right? And it was what you would hide because you didn't want anybody to know all the things that
highlighted
you truly...
in all the wrong ways.
Right.
All the wrong ways.
So most
stigmatized.
100%. And so a lot of it was bottled up. So to be honest with you, this whole thing, I want to change the culture. And that's what it was on. I know what happened to me. And by the grace of God, I made it through it. Right. And I want to be able to shine that light on that look, the whole echo, it's okay to not be okay, but it's okay to be okay as well. Right.
Yeah.
And our culture, we're responsible for that culture. Everybody's like, well, you can't change it. I beg to differ. Yes, you can. All it takes is one person. All it takes is one person standing up and doing the right thing and say, hey, you know what? Your mind is your greatest treasure. It's all your strength. Your mind is the strongest aspect that you maintain throughout your entire life. It can will you to do, or it can will you not to do, right? It can be your greatest strength because you're only as strong as your weakest thought. And everybody has weak thoughts. I don't care who you are. And it's just to pull in the culture of that. You do need grit to do this job. That's obvious. But you also want to have your humanity, right? You don't want to be cold and hard to the things we see. And Mike, you said it best when we was in Florida, and I was speaking to you about it. And you said, we see things that we should never see in our lifetime. and we see it multiple times, right? There has to be a healthy way to process that. So when I was thinking about Fit for Flight and how I could change the culture, I thought about that. I thought about mental resilience and what that means. And that means experiencing all of it, but dealing with it in a healthy way, as healthy as possible, right? With that, and when I was doing the research into that, I realized what I eat makes a huge difference in the way I think. All the research shows that your brain fog is associated with the crap that we eat, right? And along with that too, it doesn't help that I'm 5'2" and short in stature, and I've always
depends on your aircraft.
That can be an advantage in some ways.
But I never wanted to be the weak link. Yeah. I want to be able to do the job and not be a hindrance to my partner. I don't want them to say, oh my God, I got to work with her today. I'm going to do all the heavy lifting. I want to hold my own. I'm not as strong as men. I'm not even going to put myself out there like that. But I also am going to make sure I can pull my own weight. And that's what everybody should be doing, because if you're not pulling your own weight, you're a safety hazard. So it's just the whole picture of that, and try to put it out there that this is a need. I've experienced it. Everybody else has experienced it, but we can change it and we can make it better.
That's awesome. And I think, you really you touched on a lot of subjects that I really can't wait to dive into with you guys and really talk about and dissect a little bit, because I think there's so many things that are so important to us truly having a healthy lifestyle and being able to do this job and being able to do it well. And so I'm so happy that, you were able to be a pioneer in some of this and kind of bringing this whole, we'll talk more about it later, but, your triad together and being able to make sure that it's not just you personally, it's not just your particular team, but this is across the entire industry that we can try to make things better. And that's something that's so important. So really appreciate you guys doing that. And I think that really also helps to highlight, why, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, but in Austin, you received the Spirit of Echo Award.
I did.
And it's partially, in part to all the amazing things that you're doing within the industry. So
I didn't deserve it, but that was a huge
you absolutely
blessing.
Deserve
that
it.
was awesome.
She 100% deserves it.
Absolutely.
She 100%. So, Michelle doesn't give herself enough credit, but she started this organization, like she said, 4 years ago. And when I got into the industry just about a year and a half ago, I was looking around, and coming from, a law enforcement background, I saw just sort of that mental toll that some of that trauma and some of those things would present. I saw how unhealthy I got. And I said to myself, I'm going to go into this new career, approaching 40 at the time, and said, I've got to do this right. I've got to stay on top of this so that the compounding stress that builds over time doesn't break me down in that way. And I had been following Michelle for a while, and I just kind of had this. I
think we call that stalking.
Yeah, okay. I may have been internet stalking. I may have been, if you fanboying a little bit, if you will, watching her post and going like, no one else is doing this, but like, why isn't anyone else doing this, right? And I can vividly remember I'm on orientation. It's my, this is my first flight job. I'm the youngest in terms of I'm the youngest nurse. I'm the youngest flight clinician here, not necessarily in age, but definitely in years of experience. And I'm on third rider. I'm in a 407, and I go to get out after my first flight. And the floor of the 407 has that kind of sits lower, and then you have to lift your foot up to get out of the 407.
Yep.
And my leg cramped. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I can't sit, it was like an hour flight, right? And I was like, I can't sit in an uncomfortable position for an hour and not cramp when I go to get out of this thing. So it's like, all right, something's got to change. And I started doing some deep research, and I started looking at what Michelle was doing. And I thought, there's something here, right? There's a way to put this all together. And when I just cold called Michelle, I said, hey, I've got this idea. I want to put this out here. What do you think? And she was so gracious to bring me into everything that she had already put together, everything she'd already built. And we had this opportunity to say, well, what do we want to focus on? What's important here? What do we really need to do to optimize? And I was just kind of still learning at that time. And I was still doing a lot of studying and protocols, and, Triad just kept hitting, Beck's Triad. Cushing's triad, right? The trauma triad, which now the trauma diamond. And I was like, God, there's something here. Okay, so we've got physical fitness. Got to make sure we can do that. We're lifting, we're moving, we're getting in uncomfortable positions, right? We've got one arm up holding, IV pole, and then the other arm's holding the vent, and you're in this weird position, standing there trying to, load your patient. And then also we have to focus on this mental resilience, and we've got to make sure that we're staying sharp in our mind, and giving ourselves the opportunity to process what we're seeing, what we're experiencing. And finally, I was like, all right, what's impacting me? What's impacting those two pieces subconsciously that I don't even realize is carrying them down one way or another? And I started looking at what I was eating. I started looking at what was available to me when I would go to an EMS room, right? Sugar, right? Uncrustables, Rice Krispie treats, which I am a big fan of a good Rice Krispie treat. But I couldn't find any whole food. I couldn't find anything that didn't have an ingredients list. No protein, very little fruit, and lots of really processed stuff. And so I was like, all right, there's our triad, right? All three of these things, like a 3-legged table. If you take away one of those legs, the table can't stand. And you start to impact those other areas so much so that it all just implodes on itself. So that's when I came to Michelle and I said, hey, I think we've got something here. I think we can move the needle in the industry, and we can look at this from an individual level, a base culture level, and then hopefully an organizational level, so that these programs that are saying, hey, you have to be under this certain weight to work for us. Right. You have to be able to lift, squat, move, do these things. We've actually got the processes in place to support the clinicians around that. Because it's fine to say, hey, go do it. But
exactly.
How do you know what to do? Right? You go onto Instagram and you just find the most
and how do you have all the resources to be able to do it?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The equipment. What if you don't have equipment? What if you don't have space? What if you never really cooked for yourself? You don't know what meal prepping is. You don't know what macros are necessarily. I mean, we all know what it is when we break it down individually, but holistically, I just felt like it wasn't pushed forward enough in the industry. So that's where we landed, and that's how Fit for Flight Triad came to be.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Vince has been like a blessing, like a word in good season. He come up because I was kind of just spinning my wheels with the same thing and not getting no traction. I was thinking, nobody cares. I was like, nobody cares, but this is so important. And out of the blue, here he comes, and it just kind of lit my fire again. And I want to be like full steam ahead, because it is important. It's not just a cool saying, Fit for Flight. I truly care about this industry. I've been passionate. Like, I'm one of those that loved being on the truck, and I truly love being on the helicopter. To me, that's like the greatest career in medicine, right? It's the cream of the crop, and you're not going to get better than that. And I want to protect it. No. And I think as a culture, we need to protect it. We need to be accountable. We need to show extreme ownership. When I show up, I'm going to be my best. I'm going to do it for me, and I'm going to do it for my crew, right? If anything bad happens on my shift, I'll be standing right there with them, taking responsibility for it. And I just think with that mindset, we truly can protect it and change it. And that's what needs to happen, because I don't like the things that are said about EMS. I don't like the culture that creeps in with the toxicity and the terrible, terrible mindset toward humanity. Even like we chose to take care of people, I want the people that show up to take care of my family, my grandkids. You need to be fit for duty, or I'm coming after you. That's
and you don't want that to happen. You don't want her coming after you.
You don't want the wrath of Michelle.
No, you don't.
All right, calm
she
down.
Says she's 5'2".
Calm down. That's right. I'm menopausal, so I'm very strong.
Yeah. But one of the things that I find is so interesting, or maybe even appalling is maybe the right word for it. I'm not sure. I'm kind of at a loss for what the right word is right now. But Michelle, you've been doing this for a fair amount of years. We won't go back into those
Don't.
numbers again. And you've seen the effects of EMS and lifestyle on EMS and on flight clinicians and in the medicine world in general. And Vince, while you haven't necessarily been in flight medicine for a terribly long time, you've already seen in that short amount of time how detrimental this kind of lifestyle can be to our clinicians and our providers. And I think it's absolutely awesome that you two have teamed up and are really looking to try to change this in the industry. So can't wait to have, a discussion about, how we can do that and how we can make this better.
We kind of look at it from this point of view, and we'll break down, this nutritional health and discipline and physical conditioning and mental health and how they all work together. But we train really hard to get into this job, right? Through Future Flight Crew, which is, how I met both of you guys, and getting ramped up to get into this career. You guys beat it into us how important it was to stay clinically relevant, right? Stay on top of the latest education, your evidence-based practice, be a forward thinker, right? And just have that base education. And I was thinking like, well, okay, if I have all the education in the world and I've learned as much as I can learn and I know how to handle every situation, what happens when everything but the medicine falls apart, right? What happens when, and Michelle will tell you a story here in a second about something that happened to her, but what happens when like the patient's in a place that you can't get access to very well? What happens when the litter system on your helicopter stops working and you have to now, hand carry this patient from one place to another? What happens when you have more equipment than you have hands and you have to try and figure out how to manage all of this for any distance of time? Can you get the job done when everything but the medicine fails? Do you have the physical ability and do you have the mental resilience to stay sharp and move through that?
I think that is such a valid point that we don't train for that. Like you said, we train to be clinically relevant. We train for just about every what if scenario. And trust me, because all those what if scenarios that play out, you have the people at your base that shove all the what if crap stuff in the bag, right? Oh my gosh. So you have all this stuff, right? Okay, what if this happens to my patient? Okay, you work somewhere where you must bring the blood cooler, you must bring the vent, you must bring the chest tube bag, right? You must bring your first in bag. You must bring every medication available just in case something happens, right? So we prep and train for that. But like you said, what if it's not the medicine that's the issue, but it's just like the physical aspect to that? And
the logistics of it,
I just want to take this back just for a second. For all of us that got into this job, did everybody have to get a physical before you started the job?
Yep.
Yeah.
I did.
Like I remember vaguely, and Michelle, I started when I was 23, so I'll let everybody do the math.
Yeah.
I remember going in for the physical, right? And the doctor, they're like, okay, what brings you in? I'm getting a job. I'm going to work for EMS. And, if I would have said, I'm going to work for the fire service, or I'm going to be in law enforcement, or, I'm going into the military, something like that. Like there's already this like expectation that you're physically fit or how to be physically fit. But when I said, hey, I'm going to be working in EMS, her very next sentence was, oh boy, well, you're starting young, so you better start now because, historically, EMS people, you live out of gas stations and sodas and energy drinks. So you really got to take care of yourself.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, I got this. And here I am almost 20 years later,
It's true.
Probably doing the exact opposite, but
That's just plain black coffee in there, right? You're just doing your straight plain black coffee for a little bit of a caffeine.
I'm slowly trying a different creamer. I will say that. But like, I just remember, Michelle, you brought it up. Like, why don't we start from the get-go or right out the gate supporting EMS? Like, it's not the earn money sleeping. Yeah, we know that's the funny acronym that we put out there because we all know that ain't even remotely close to it, right?
I feel like EMS doesn't get... EMS to me has always been the like invisible hero of the trinity of emergencies. And when I say trinity of emergencies, it's fire, police, and EMS. The problem is people don't know there's a trinity to that, and they leave EMS out, right? We're just like the slime beneath my toes that's coming, to help, we don't get any recognition. And I've
Must
always
be a Mississippi term.
It is. I have many of them.
Nice.
But I don't think
I
they've
can't
ever
physically
got
recover
their.
from this.
They don't get recognition, and it's never been important to anybody to push it, right? Because you just show up and you just do your job, and it's part of the job. Where part of the job should be your mental fitness and your physical fitness. That should be just as important because they're safety issues. If your mind is not right, you're a danger, right?
Yeah. And EMS, like, we're not just ambulance drivers or helicopter ride along attendants, you know, like
Self-loading baggage.
right. You know, we like, and that's
There goes
something
that term again.
I've
Like,
been called that by somebody.
I just wish we like could really break that so much. And that's something that, like, when I teach or when I, you know, the things that I put out for Future Flight Crew, you know, when you work in the hospital, you know, you have a lot of resources available for that reason, right? You're seeing a large amount of people, you're taking care of multiple patients, you know, you're doing a lot of things at once. In EMS, you're also doing a lot of things at once, but primarily our focus is typically one patient at a time. Well, especially when we get into the very critically ill and injured, we are focusing that one. It doesn't say that multiple patients don't get treated correctly. We have to triage, and we bring somebody else of equal or like-mindedness to do that same job. And as, you know, pre-hospital clinicians, we are anesthesia, we are respiratory, we are emergency medicine, you know, we are ortho, you know, we're doing so many things at once with very limited tools. And so if the rest of the world truly saw how much pre-hospital clinicians and you know, even when you're doing interfacilities,
right,
you know, you're medically managing a patient with preset guidelines, but you've still got to think. I mean, just because some of these things are there, like, you still have to think. And, you know, I really hope that kind of ties it in. Like, EMS has always been that, you know, outer, you know, third wheel, you know, we're always the tag along, but we're always there, but we do so much more, and we should really hold ourselves individually accountable and each other. Like, let's own it. We do an incredible job.
It is an incredible job, and it's an incredible responsibility, and we can shine it best when we do protect it, and we have that mindset to change the culture like you do. And one of the things that you said, I like saying to people and remind them, you're a clinician. You're not just, like you said, an ambulance driver. You're going to be there first. You're going to make the difference. You're going to make the difference in how long they stay at the hospital. And basically everything that happens in your care till you get to the hospital is extremely important. Your job is so important. And I'm like you. I just wish other people knew how much they do, all the crap they got to go through. They're expected to perform, and sometimes they don't even have the proper training to do so, you know, but they still show up and they still do it.
And, you know, to that point, that expectation of performance, right? I mean, we as flight clinicians, as EMS clinicians, pre-hospital clinicians, going all the way back to the Freedom Ambulance Service, right? And looking at, you know, Freedom House and what they were doing there, this expectation to perform. So when we were saying, like, hey, you've got to be able to come in and perform all of these complex medical procedures at a high level, right? Dash 1A metrics, first pass success, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Great. You can do that well, but you physically have to be able to perform to be able to be successful at that. And that's where this Fit for Flight Triad is really meant to focus. It's to, you know, you're talking about getting the respect and getting the recognition. I loosely say that recognition that is deserved, but it's like, you get that when you square yourself away. And to become squared away, we believe, Michelle and I at least, that if you dial in your nutrition and you dial in your physical conditioning, you will dial in your mental health. And once all three of those are optimized and running as best as they can, right? A kind of an 80-20 approach. 80% of the time we're doing really well. 20% of the time we're leaving room for some variability and some fun and just some relaxation, right? It doesn't have to be this strict thing. But when you put all that together, you have this high functioning machine, just like a high functioning team, right? We talk about the pit crew method in resuscitation, right?
Right.
Well, it's the same thing in our physical health and in our our abilities to do that job. So when we start putting that all together and we start looking at how that impacts us, how that impacts our cognitive state at 2:00 in the morning, right? What you ate at 2:00 in the afternoon can impact how well you can wake up from a dead sleep and go run a cardiac arrest, right? How much physical activity, right? And it doesn't necessarily even have to be exercise, right? There's NERPA, there's non-exercise physical activity. How much you did in the preceding days can impact how well you sleep, even if it's a short amount of time, and how recovered you are, and how far you can press that sleep deprivation and still function at a high level.
So where do we start? So Vince, you were sitting in the 407 and tried to get out and cramped. I got out of bed this morning, had a good night's sleep, hurt my back, right? So,
right.
So what comes first, right? Do you start with food? Do you change your diet? Do you start with exercise? So how, like for me, because I'll be the first one to tell you, and I need to do something, and I want to do something, right? I want to be better. I'll just throw the age out. I'm 42, right? So I'm not getting any younger. I'm trying to start a family. I'm trying to be better, and I want to be around, right? I want to break the stigma of things that I've preconceivably set for myself, my fault, right? But I want to be better. So where do I start? How do I make myself feel better, be healthy? What do I do to get started?
There's tons of stuff, right? We can go everywhere, but it's like he said, it's a triad. It has to start with your mind. It has to start with what you truly want, what your desires are, and you have to have a plan and you have to attack them. If you don't get this right, you're not going to get the other stuff right? You can want to eat healthy all day long. I want to eat healthy, but that cake is calling me. I want to be strong.
And its siren song is immutable. You cannot defeat it, right?
No, I want to be strong, but those Bulgarian split squats hurt, right? And it's like, if I don't decide in my mind that I'm going to have discipline to reach my goals, to set a plan for myself and be responsible to myself, I'm never going to be successful. That's at work. That's at home. That's at play. That's where it starts.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
And I think that concept is so important that you're talking about there, Michelle, because when you think about just that whole, I think what scares a lot of people, and this is myself included, when I started, wanting to get back to the gym and eat a little bit better and, feel better in general, was like this general overwhelmingness of looking at this whole big picture. And oh my God, all of this stuff that I need to do, and I don't even know where to start. And so for me, the mindset aspect of it was about compartmentalizing, setting a goal each day and making sure that my mind was on track to accomplish that particular goal. And then as those days go on, those goals got easier and easier and easier. And finally, before you know it, you end up having that flip of the switch where you're like, well, no, my entire priorities have changed, and my priorities have changed to make sure that I'm bettering myself. My priority used to be hey, it's been a rough day, I'm going to go to the bar and have a drink. Well, now my priority is, hey, it's been a rough day, I'm going to go to the gym and get some steam out.
Right. Yeah. And I hope that people understand, I'm using myself just as an example. I want to be healthier and better, but I'm hoping, and I think all of us on here, for all our listeners, we hope that this could help you if you're in that same situation to make these good changes. So I just want to throw that out there. I genuinely just want to be healthier. And I also hope that if you do as well, that this will speak for you or help you make those first few steps. So, all right. So in that mind.
So to both your points, right? You start in your head, right?
Right.
And Mike, what you said, it's not the long-term goal. Hey, the long-term goal, maybe you want to lose 20 pounds, you want to work in this career for 20 years and not have a back injury, right? You want to live another 40 years and not have a major coronary or whatever it may be, right? But you have to start with the lowest hanging fruit. And that's, what can I do today? I can make at least one positive change today. And once you start getting your mind right and you start making those small victories, it's just like everything we do in medicine. You walk in and you've got, this patient that just got dropped in front of you and has multiple gunshot wounds in, multiple different areas. Well, what's your priority? Well, he's not breathing, he's bleeding. We take it one step at a time and we work each problem. So we'll start with the mind. Let's make one small change today that we can continue to make that change, move the needle in the right direction.
Sure.
And then as we build that skill, as we build that ability to replicate that, we can replicate that success, then we can start branching out into more difficult things. So we're moving from the lowest hanging fruit to the highest. And only you know what that is, right? Everyone listening, right? Only know what their high. So if working out is you just hate it, it's your antithesis of what you don't want to do, that's maybe the thing that you're going to move towards last. But like, you could get behind maybe some meal prepping or eating a little better at home. Maybe meal prepping and feeling like you have to cook your own food is just the worst thing on the planet. And you're just like, I do not want to do that. Okay, well, maybe that's going to be the things that once we've been really successful in these other areas, right, we can work towards it. So everybody's path on the triad is different, but in reality, you can start at any point, and always get to the same goal, which is overall physical, mental, and emotional health.
Vince, to your point there, I think, at least the way I feel being conditioned in this industry is that I need results now. I'm very immediate with those results, and I'm not patient with it. Patience is not one of my strongest points. So like, if I'm going in to help a patient, like, things need to happen now, they need to happen quickly, they need to happen right, and we need to move in a positive direction. And so this has been like, this journey for me has been one that has been incredibly humbling, in that I need to give myself grace each day, along with setting those goals and making sure that I'm in it for the long run and not going for that immediate gratification.
And, and this job builds us to look for the instant fix, right? So we provide something to a patient that needs help. It fixes it. We're like, cool, we move on, right? That I guess in the grand scheme of things, that just isn't how everything works, right? And it's a slow build over time. So I guess we have to set our mindset for that, right?
It's like I tell my partner, a lot of times before we get out of the aircraft, go do a call, I always remind him, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And that goes to say with our goals. And the research shows, Mike, what you said works best. You set one goal a week. Don't set it for a month, and don't give up everything at one time, because you're setting yourself up for failure. Nobody wants to do that. Your body's going to hate you, right? Pick one thing, pick a goal, crush it, because that builds your mental, disciplines. Like, wow, I did that. That's like checking off a list, how that makes you feel better. So pick that one thing and crush it that week. And then when you're done with that, pick something else.
Yeah, I think that's something that's so important.
So when I got that cramp getting out of that 407, I was like, I can't do that. I can't live like this. I will not live that like this. I said, okay, I am just going to get to the point where I am more flexible.
Right? Yeah.
And that's where I started. So I was like, I am just going to add 3 days of stretching into my normal routine, right? And I can do that on shift. I have an app that I use. It's 20-minute sessions. And I bought one of the mats, I brought it to the base, and I started adding that in. And it was difficult at first, but it started getting easier and easier. And I found over time that I was able to move around. It's a 407, right? I'm 6 foot tall, 225 pounds. Like, I'm not built for that thing. But I was able to start moving around inside that aircraft in ways I never would have imagined that I could have, just by adding that small little change. And as that progressed and kind of things changed for me, I was able to dial in the rest of the stuff. But just picking one small goal that I can work on and be successful at is a great place for people to start to kind of bring it back home for you. But
so, like, as we move forward with that, and so obviously mindset, you guys mentioned, is kind of like the starting point for a lot of people in getting that mind in the right track. And setting a goal is one way to help you do that. What are some other ways that you guys can suggest for somebody to be able to help get that mindset in the right direction so they can start making those positive decisions?
Well, one thing, like, the mind is huge, right? We could go down mental health, and that's why I love the triad of Fit for Flight, because there's so many things that come off of it. But when you're setting that goal, you have to picture yourself successful, right? And why I'm saying that is for negative talk. So does anybody here ever experience that or know somebody that's kind of negative person and they experience this? Whatever you tell yourself, you're listening, right? And you're going to believe it. Your words are impactful, not only to other people, but to yourself, because whatever you see athletes all the time with the positive self-talk, and there's science behind that. You have to see yourself as successful. You have to talk yourself up. You have to remind yourself who you are. You have to remind yourself what your goals are, and then you have to be determined to do them. You have to believe in yourself a little bit, right? And you absolutely have to guard your thoughts in that. And when negative thoughts start coming, this is too hard. Oh, I hate this. Stop it. Just stop it. Speak positive self-talk to yourself. I can do this. I'm strong enough. I've done harder things than this. I'm responsible for other humans. I can surely do this one thing in front of me, right? So your mind is
powerful. But we're also horrible at that.
Oh, we're also horrible about it at times. You just have to guard it. And when that negative thought comes in, you have to take it captive. And that's part of your mental resilience, right? You have to be in control of this or it's going to control you and you will not be successful.
And, I'm sure we all experienced it at different times. Like I'm experiencing it a lot right now, but I'm sure the rest of you all had that imposter syndrome, right? We've talked about this a lot.
Absolutely.
In Future Flight Crew and just in the industry in general and crew resource management and mental health overall. And so I feel like you have to understand your why, right? Yep. Why do you want to do this? Am I doing it for myself? Am I doing it for my patients? Am I doing it for my family? Am I doing it for my career? What's the reason that I actually want to do this, right? I just didn't want to cramp when I got in that. To be 100% honest, that was my only thought when I started going down this road. I just didn't want to have a cramp every time I got out of the house. And
you're really focused on this cramp.
Yeah.
It was terrible. It was a bad cramp, man. I was embarrassed.
Life-changing for you.
I was embarrassed.
I will amputate this leg if it cramps up again.
Yes. If I would rather... I won't go down that road because I'm sure that there are people out here who'd be like, you don't know. So you just have to understand your why, right? Nope, won't do that. You have to understand your why. And then you really have to have something a little bit bigger than yourself, right? Yeah. So we recommend dialing in whatever spiritual work is going to help with you. Now, when I say spiritual, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be one religious based or anything along those lines, but what can ground you in something where you can go and find some of that solace. Some people find it in meditation. Some people find it in faith. Michelle and I, we're equally yoked in our faith beliefs, so we are able to anchor ourselves there. Right. Some people find it in reading and education, in anything that can calm that mind down and start to build that resilience, because you have to train your mind the same way that we train our body, right? And we have to fuel our mind the same way that we fuel our body. And so we're going to get that training, right, from being focused and being engaged and kind of listening to ourselves, but also fuel it with positivity and things that are going to enrich that mind so that it forges that strong, impenetrable mindset.
When you guys were talking about, and Vince, and I've heard this saying before, and if you could tell me, what is it about you wouldn't put low grade fuel in a Ferrari?
Yeah, right. You're not going to put
87.
You're not going to put 87, right? Your low test into a Ferrari. You're not going to put some non-av gas into your helicopter, right? Right. The helicopter, the Ferrari, these are high performing machines. These are things that are so finely tuned and are engineered to a point that they have thought about everything. And if you put that really poor substance, that really crummy gas or crummy fuel into something that's used to having really high octane stuff, it's going to perform poorly. And so when we move out of the mental realm, we start moving into the nutritional realm of this, of how we're fueling ourselves, right? We look at the whole food sources or the food sources that we're putting into our body. We look at what we're telling ourselves, right? So do you have that positive self-talk? And then what are you surrounding yourself with? Are you surrounding yourself with negative people, or are you surrounding yourself with positive people? Are you surrounding yourself with people who lift you up, who are good mentors, who want to do good medicine, who are proactive in, not letting complacency creep in? Or are you surrounding yourself with people who are lazy and who are encouraging you to, just sit back and watch, movies all day and take naps and never move your practice forward? So it's really what you feel and how you feed yourself that is going to make a big difference.
Mentally, nutritionally, and physically. And that's a great point of how to get started, Mike. One of the other things is what he just said. Surround yourself with like-minded people. Sometimes when you want to change, you have to change your environment. And that's one of the things that can give you some motivation, which we can't always live off motivation, right? But to get started, having motivation is key. And I'm glad that I wanted to talk about nutrition for a second because of what he just said. It reminded me of something I looked up. But first, I wanted to ask a question. Has anybody ever put gas in a diesel ambulance?
Try not to.
He's turning red. Blake, did you do it? No? We all know one person that did.
No. So the reason why I'm blushing,
getting redder. I can see the color changing. I wish everybody could be watching this right now. That's listening.
They can on YouTube. The reason why, I'll tell you this. So our the agency I work for, we just switched to gasoline ambulances. We have brand new ambulances. They're amazing. And we switched to gasoline motors, V10, right? So you floor it. There goes 4 gallons, right? But when you, I'm just laughing at that because that was something that we brought up. And I've grown up always wrenched into working on cars. So I know that the diesel nozzle, won't fit in the gasoline fuel filler, but the vice versa can happen. So because right now we have a mix of both. So we have 10 brand new ambulances that are gasoline, and we have 15 more.
That's scary. That's going to get messed up.
And then we still have some of the diesel. And so we are all at our agency. We are all working so hard to just make sure we just stop, take a moment, pay attention, make sure you're using the right gas. So I didn't do it. I haven't done it. But here's the thing. But you guys said it though, right? What if it's 2 a.m., right? You haven't done all these things, right? And you filled up at the EMS room. You're 3 monsters and 4 Zins into your night shift. And now you're oh, I got to go get gas. And you're just you grab the gasoline and you start filling up the diesel.
You're just a zombie at that point, right?
Yeah.
Your body is functioning, but your brain is not actively computing what's happening.
To my admin that might be listening, I did not fill up the ambulance with the wrong gas. I promise.
I would hope not. You just got your fancy feature, right? They did your little news spread. Yeah, he's a bona fide hero.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
So the nutrition is just as huge as the mental health, right? We could do a whole podcast just on that and people's different opinion on it. And it can go deep and as complicated as you want it to go. But I have the statistics are so bad. I'm going to say it twice because I didn't even believe it the first time I read it. But when we talk about nutrition and EMS, it is so terrible. It's an epidemic due to the heart disease that it causes and the diabetes. It's 75% are obese. 75%. That's insane. And then when weight goes up, diabetes goes up, hypertension goes up, cardiovascular disease. So with that same research, we're at 45% online duty deaths in EMS or cardiac arrest. And that's serious. Wow. And when you put these numbers together and you start looking at them, it's not even funny anymore because now we got an epidemic in the EMS and nobody's taking it seriously because the culture is stop at the gas station, grab the bar, grab the monster, grab this instead of, hey, all this matters. We put so much attention, and we should, taking care of our patients. Who's taking care of us? They trained me how to take care of everybody. Nobody told me that I was going to have to take care of myself along the way.
You're supposed to figure it out.
Yeah. And it's dude, 75%. that's nuts, right? Or am I the only one that thinks that's crazy? When I said 75%, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think I've found myself over, I look at my career in EMS, or the amount of time that I've been in healthcare, for the past 26 years, and I look at how my lifestyle changes have really, been associated over that time frame. And a lot of it has had to do with the people that I was hanging around with at that point in time, because we're very susceptible to that peer pressure that goes with it.
Yeah.
But along with that peer pressure came making the bad decisions of, oh yeah, we'll go and grab a burger tonight, or oh yeah, we'll just go and have this stuff from the EMS room. I mean, and there are still days, I'm sad to say, that I live off of Uncrustables and ham sandwiches
80-20
from the EMS room,
80-20.
because that's the only thing that I'm able to eat, because we're out all day long. And I think that obviously the meal prepping is, you guys have touched upon that before, the best way to be able to combat that. But then there's also the challenge of, I may not be around my meals that I've prepped for the entire shift because we've been out and about.
That's real life, and it makes it hard. It makes it really hard.
Yeah. And that is tough. I think one of the, when you start the meal prepping, or where you start looking at, and again, we're advocating for 80-20 here. We live in an unpredictable state. It's the only thing that we can count on is unpredictability and having no sense of what actually is going to happen.
Plan is there is no plan.
From minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, call to call. We don't know what's going to happen. You get, they say no equipment, and you walk in and they're on, 6 trips and events and a balloon pump, and you're like, oh yeah,
sweet,
great, whatever. But the reality is, you can combat some of that inconsistency or some of that variability with that meal prepping by, when you have time to consume those whole foods and to consume those things, and you really start diving into the macros, and you start understanding how fueling with protein and how carb timing and how fats can, like protein and fats, they're very satiating, so they can keep you full longer. So you can go maybe through that call to that EMS room, and you're not so starved for calories, right? To where you're just deciding like, oh, I'm going to go in here, I'm just going to grab these things. There are going to be times you have to listen to your body. There's a difference between being hungry and a hunger cue, and then having a craving. And it takes some time to learn the difference, because everybody's body kind of talks or tells you what's what differently. But yeah, just being able to say, okay, you know what, today I am going to have to live off of this, but that doesn't have to derail the rest of my day, the rest of my week, the rest of my month, right? It's just, this is what I have right now. I'm going to fuel to the best of my ability.
Right.
And then I'm going to get right back on track, and I'm going to move forward and make some of those choices.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, and I'm hoping you guys might have this answer. There is some science, right, behind, I don't know what they call it, like calorie confusion or whatever, so if you're in that 80% and you stuck to your diet, right? The unprocessed foods, no added sugars, you ate really clean, really good whole foods for 80% of the time. And if your goal was weight loss, and on your weekend, you were like, I'll have a couple slices of pizza, I might have one beer or so. And then you get back on track come Monday, right? Your body still adapts to it's used to utilizing this good whole foods, and then you introduce some stuff maybe not so good. Your body's like, yo, let's utilize this, let's get rid of it as we can, and then you come back. Is there some science to that?
Yeah, and again, we could do a whole podcast on that alone. But so what really it comes down to, and I'll just use weight loss as an example because you brought that up, right? When you hit that goal Monday through Friday, you put yourself in a caloric deficit. And I'm going to say this, some people may not love it, but the true evidence behind this is like the best way to reduce your body weight, your size, change your body composition is through a caloric deficit, right? Fewer calories in, more calories out, your body will slowly over time trend in the right direction, the direction you're trying to go. But when you do good Monday through Friday, and then you just let yourself,
go for the weekend,
right? And that 20% starts to become like 30, 40, 50, 60% on the weekends. You can get the same amount of caloric intake sometimes in 1 or 2 days in the weekend as you did in the 5 days of the week.
Yeah.
And so you're negating all of that. So there has to be some room to have some boundaries, right?
Right.
You have to understand, like, we understand biology. You could go and look at, diabetic ketoacidosis. You understand what's happening, how the sugar is being, sugar and potassium and all of these things are moving around in and out of the cell. Well, the same thing is happening with a healthy person. When you have this really good, you're fueling with good whole quality foods, and then you start putting processed sugars and things that throw your body into chaos, right? It doesn't know how to process this. You're getting these insulin spikes, you're getting glucose dumps, you're getting glycogenesis and glycolysis all at the same time. Your body's just like, what have you done? Why are you doing this?
That's what I did to myself yesterday. I am 1,000% not going to lie.
I think what happened is on the weekend, people, they want that cheat meal, but it turns into a cheat weekend. And basically is what he's saying. You did good all week, but the problem is in 2 days, you managed to double all the calories you had all week. And it's super easy to do because, I mean, pizza, I love pizza. Like, I really, really love pizza. But I can also eat a whole pizza. I can eat a whole pizza by myself. So, I mean, but it's like
call sign cannoli, baby.
Have you added up how many calories are in one slice? It's easy to see how that whole pizza I just ate was more than I ate in 3 days.
I refuse to have that kind of negativity in my life.
That negative self-talk right there.
Yeah. Pizza, though, honestly, it can make you happy one day. And sometimes everybody needs a slice of pizza. I'm a firm believer in that. But I think the problem is the 2 consecutive days of the weekend of blowing everything because you did good in 5 days. The only problem with that is you just blew what you did in 5 days. All that discipline and all that hard work that you did is kind of out of the window because of the 2 surplus days. So like you said, the 80-20, when I do 80-20, that's not every meal like that day I'm going to cheat. I'm going to maybe have one cheat meal throughout the day, and I'm going to try and maintain what I had. If not, I kind of look at it as I have to start over because all my hard work was for nothing. I suffered all those days, of wanting something and denying myself for absolutely nothing.
And I think, a lot of what you guys are getting at here, and correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, but like, you really need to find what works for you and your body. And like, everybody's different. For me, when I look back on some of the dietary things that I've done over the years, and the one thing that helped me lose a lot of weight was doing keto. Well, 1, only good for so long, but 2, I don't necessarily know that it was the keto that was what helped me. It was that I was making better choices about the foods that I was eating in the first place. And so I think, a lot of people go into this and be like, oh, well, that's great. You can meal prep and you can do this, but maybe that doesn't work for them. They just need to find what does work for them when it comes to the nutritional side of things to be able to keep that healthy lifestyle, right?
Yes, exactly. And like anything, we are recommending that people take the time. You don't have to do this alone.
Sure.
We are saying, hey, reach out to us and we'll help connect you with resources that are going to help you make these decisions easier so you can find out what works for you. So, for example, I work with a coach. His name's Nate Baycott. He's phenomenal. He is part of a group called Positively Jacked. He sets my macros for me, right? I can do it myself, but he understands it at a level above me, right? And so we all know who our resources are, our online medical direction and our PCGs and different things along those lines. We go, when we reach the top of our knowledge spectrum, we go to the person above us. Well, when I've reached the top of my nutritional knowledge, I'm going to somebody who can help me understand this at a better level and guide me through it. So we want to help connect people with those resources so they can find out what works for them and reach whatever those goals are. It may not be calorie deficit. It may not be weight loss. It may be maintenance. It may be body composition. It may be just fueling a little bit better so that they're not dealing with these highs and lows of cravings and different things along those lines. So that's really kind of the other piece of what we're driving home is like, let's be smart about this. Let's make sure we're consolidating the resources and we know how to send people, or people know what they can do and where they can find that information.
Yeah. And I think that's too, talking about how everybody's needs are different. All 4 of us are made completely different. They're different things. I'm the only female here and premenopausal, so my needs of nutrition are a lot different than y'all's. I can tell you that. But like he said, phone a friend. Nothing, the things that I do might not work for you at all, right? I need a little bit more fat right now because I'm learning that's going to help my hormones and things like that. But what a lot of people don't realize too is your resources. So my medical insurance actually pays for me to have an appointment with a nutritionist. And if a lot of people would even just check into their insurance to see if that's an offer, it might be one visit every 6 months. But, you know, if you had a face-to-face appointment free because you have insurance with your nutritionist, you're going to learn a lot and you're going to learn what you need to go forward. I feel like a lot of people just don't know the resources. And it's kind of like with best education right now. There's so much of it. It's like drinking out of a fire hose, right? Sometimes I get overwhelmed with just the amount of education and realize the stuff I don't know. Well, it's equal with nutrition. It's equal with working out because there's so much science and there's so much involved with it. I have to, like I told Vince, I'm not a nutritionist, but I know I have learned through research what my body needs and what I'm doing. And I'm going to take it to the most basic, simple level I can, because that's the only way I can maintain it. For me, it's overwhelming. So if I can stay with the basics, I find that I'm more successful. And my basics are watching my protein and watching my calories and making sure I'm getting enough fat for my hormones.
So if I can ask just for, some advice from the two of you guys, I look at myself and my daily lineup for my schedule, right? And things are usually packed solid and busy. A day off doesn't feel like a day off. I constantly have things that are going on. How does someone like myself be able to make those healthy, conscious, nutritional decisions going through those days when I feel like, I'm not alone in this, and I feel like there's a lot of professionals within our industry that struggle with being able to have that forward thinking or have the time to have that forward thinking and do that meal prep. So if I'm not able to do that meal prep, what kind of like goals or rules can I try to stick by that'll help to steer me in the right direction, maybe not throw off that 80-20? Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support. Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. We hope today's conversation got you thinking about your own health and wellness and how taking care of yourself is truly important to our job in promoting longevity. Whether it's meal prepping for the week, taking time to just move your body, or just be a little bit kinder with your self-talk, it all adds up. Small steps can make a big difference, especially in a profession that is demanding as ours. Remember, being fit for a flight isn't just about the job, it's about showing up as your best self for your crew, your patients, and your family. To all our listeners, thanks so much for joining us in this conversation and your continued support of the Vertical Helicast platform. Whether you're part of a flight crew or just passionate about the world of air medical transport, we hope you found some takeaways to apply on your next shift. If you haven't already, head over to www.echoflightcrew.org to learn more about the teams and programs that support this community, and be sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time on the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, where we will continue to highlight the people and stories that make this industry great.